So I'll just give you a little background because I think this is helpful. This particular photo of Lama Yeshe is the last teaching he gave before he passed away. And that is myself sitting there in the corner, kind of funny. And this teaching Lama Yeshe gave, he was quite ill. And I think I was the only one, along with my wife, that, and of course, a couple of lamas, that knew that he wasn't well. And my relationship with Lama Yeshe, which spanned for about 9 years, I was responsible for establishing the Western education for the monks at Cayton. So that meant the English, mathematics, social studies, that sort of thing. And then, of course, helped organize the courses. We, as you know, probably, that Cayton hosts a very, very renowned course every November for 1 month. I was at the 6th one or 8th one, and now we're up to, I don't know, 45. I don't know which one we're at now. My kids have gone to the course as well in recent years. So this was at the November course, but it was after the course, and Lama was giving some teachings, which he often did after the November course ended. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche typically taught the course. And in this teaching, Lama was very, very ill, and usually Lama was very punctual. In other words, he didn't push the students too far. He wouldn't almost never talk for more than 2 hours, unlike Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who can talk for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. And so at about 2 hours, I was very uncomfortable because he didn't look well to me, and he just kept on teaching. And then at about the 2 hour mark, he paused and said, okay, let's take a break. And usually that would be a point where he would say, we would finish and dedicate and he would leave. So when he said, okay, let's take a pee-pee break, I stood up and whispered in his ear, Lama, I think better to go, because he wasn't feeling well. And he told me to, in his usual way, he gave me one compliment in 9 years. I just want you to know that. He was very strict with me. He was very stern. He whispered back to me, sit down and shut up. So little did I know that was the last teaching he would ever give. Not too long after, a day or two later, I flew with him sort of not secretly, but we flew down to New Delhi to go to the hospital. I was with one other monk, Sherpa monk. And we were in Delhi for about 2 months. He was in the hospital for about a month of that. And then after 2 months, got him well enough to come to the United States for heart surgery. And the predictions were that if he made it to Tibetan New Year's morning, sunrise, he would live a long time. And he was scheduled to have the surgery that morning of Tibetan New Year's morning, and he died as the sun rose. I'm sure it was all planned. He never intended to have the surgery. So Lama Yeshe was unique for those who don't know him. And there are videos, old videos available on the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive or YouTube. And of course, his teachings that have been coming out over years and in the booklets and different books that we've been publishing. But what I want to express about Lama Yeshe, and I think it sets the tone for this series that we're doing, is that he was, just despite being my heart father and my heart teacher, he was unique. Everybody seemed to have a sense of connection and affection for him. Even my parents, who were not Buddhists, they just really enjoyed him. They connected. And I think that's the quality of someone who's actualized their human potential, or actualizing their human potential. They connect. The Dalai Lama says that every time he meets someone, he meets an old friend. And wouldn't that be nice if we felt that, But that feeling, for those who've met these kinds of beings, these kinds of beings, I don't want to romanticize it too much, but I also want to encourage everyone to know that this is a possibility. We have a possibility, we to just think theoretically and philosophically that there's a quality of mind that's awakened, a quality of mind that's beyond this ego that Lama Yeshe speaks about, limited ego. You first have to really, really know that possibility is there. And that's what separates the spiritual person from the non-spiritual. And here, spiritual, I'm not using as Buddhist, okay? It's spiritual means, to me, someone who knows that there's more to this human quality, human mind, spirit, than what we all just think there is. And people have that awakening or have that insight through different means, through meditation, through drugs, maybe through in retreat, through nature, right? Through connecting, through loving another person, where just you go beyond concepts and you go into direct experience. I know there was one student I'm very close to, he's about 30, and he went to the November course, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. He had trouble because he had some health problems going on, so he didn't really get the full benefit, we could say, out of it. But he's known Lama Zopa Rinpoche his whole life. And he wouldn't call himself a Buddhist before then, necessarily, but he is a Buddhist. And he was standing in line when Lama Zopa Rinpoche arrived at Kopan for the November course, and they do a big procession. And Rinpoche was walking down the procession, or whatever you want to call it, the aisle. What do you call that? The walkway, whatever. With a couple hundred people lining the path. And he stopped at this young man, and he turned to him, and he went up to him and grabbed, because he was like this, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche grabbed his hands and blew on them, just blew on them. And at that point, this guy, who's not a big believer, not disbeliever, not big, felt a whole electric kind of energy go through his body. And that was enough to, even though he'd known Rinpoche his whole life, this was the convincing experience that said, wow, there is more to this human existence than what appears to us. There's more to the human mind than what it just appears to us. Lama Yeshe was also an example of this. You didn't have an experience of him. It was impossible to be around Lama Yeshe, like the Dalai Lama and like Lama Zopa, where you didn't go, whoa, wait. After a little while, it's like, hey, there's something else going on here. Because one of the things is that that's the beauty of this practice, this path, is I was a Hindu practitioner. I'm not comparing, but I was a Hindu practitioner as a young person, 17, 18, after I got out of I went from drugs to Hinduism and yoga, and because I was really looking for something. And when I had a number of Hindu teachers, and then eventually when I became Buddhist, when I moved to Nepal in 1975, what blew my mind was these people that were, that after a while came to know they were highly realized, had actualized their human potential, had the more they seemed to actualize, the more they hid it. It was hidden. Now, you can't completely hide it. It starts leaking out of their being, right? It starts leaking. You start getting a sense, wait, what just happened there? Or, but that might take some time before, but they can't completely hide it. And so with Lama Yeshe, he was like that. One of the messages that Lama Yeshe passed on, I think probably his trademark or his brand, was taking these esoteric, philosophical, deep psychological teachings and expressing it in a way that was palpable and relevant, okay? So that you didn't have to kind of go up in the sky to try to understand them. He brought it down to us. A lot like what's going on with the Dalai Lama these days in terms of the mind science work that he's doing, life science, what's it called? Mind Life Institute. And, those kinds of things that are now becoming more prevalent. Because Lama Yeshe used to say, these ideas are not Tibetan. These ideas are universal. And he said to me and a number of people, he said, your job is to explain these ideas in a way that your mother can understand them. So I would say that's my mission, personally. Just sharing with you. If they're universal, then they apply to everybody. It doesn't mean that everyone's open to them, because that's not from the side of the teachings, that's from the side of the personality. So this is what we got. We got these universal teachings, these principles, and we had Lama Yeshe spending his whole short teaching history working at communicating them in a way that they were accessible. Another thing is that what is of importance, I really want to get you a flavor of Lama Yeshe, because when we look at the book Ego, Attachment, and Liberation, we're getting a real clear snapshot of Lama Yeshe's style. Okay, he could take any traditional teaching and make it understandable to just about anybody. Without, now here's the challenge. So what I noticed today, and I'm wondering if any of you noticed the same thing. What I noticed today in my work, in this work that we're doing now, is that there is great interest in Buddhist thought. It's become sort of mainstream. And people say, isn't it fantastic? Buddhists say, isn't it fantastic how widespread it is, how open it is, and how accessible it is? And I have sort of two answers for that. One answer is, yeah, that's fantastic. But there's a downside to it. And the downside is that as more and more people access this information, and the commercialization, how we are as commercial, and the commercialization of the teachings, I've noticed that things are being left out, things are being changed, things are being watered down. And so I'm not personally going to do that. I want to maintain the essence. It's like it's like Rubina, same thing. But we have other teachers, that are making great pains to have people access these ideas, but in the process, I'm not sure if they're getting watered down or polluted, or because losing their essence for the sake of communicating. And by the way, I don't think that's all bad. I'm not saying like that. It's just not what I want to do. An example of that is how mindfulness has become so prevalent and it's right in the last 10, 15 years. Well, mindfulness is originally from Buddhist philosophy, right? But if you look at what's all the different mindfulness practices in schools, there's mindfulness in work, mindfulness in business, mindfulness in schools. So that's positive. But it doesn't mean will actualize the human potential, which is what Buddhist philosophy and psychology is focused on. Okay, so it's a little bit, try not to be too pedantic or too rigid. That's kind of that's the challenge for someone like me, and maybe for you too, is maintain the purity, but maintain the purity, but communicate it so people can access it. Okay, anybody want to comment on anything? Let me get rid of this for a second. Yeah. Anyone have anything to say? Because I like if there's interaction, I'm always happy with that, by the way. And if you're not, I'll go ahead.
Just a quick comment on how you've maybe observed how things are watered down. Something that I've experienced is and there's hundreds in this certain group, and there's a complete lack. It's like they've gone to the nihilist side. It's like there's nihilism. So it's your fault. You can be punished. It's we don't care about your punishment, and in fact we might punish you more. You know what I mean? There's that kind of ethos and feel about it, and I can just see how quite dangerous that is. There's such a small but integral point that's missed out that is really causing a mass of people to generate bad karma. For their future path.
There's so much we can talk about. There's one, as you know, I'm slowly winding down my private practice, but I've been a practicing psychotherapist for many years. And one of my clients is a Buddhist, and she originally came out of another tradition. I think it better I don't say the other traditions, but not Tibetan tradition. And she's still involved with them because she's becoming a chaplain. I guess they have a chaplaincy program, and this particular student and client has been going through a lot of struggles in her life and stuff like that. And basically, when she's talking to chaplaincy, they were telling her to, that she should go and sue this person and take him to court and all this stuff. And the client said, but I'm not going to do that because the karma is too heavy for that, something like that. And it wasn't that this person, wasn't like the real criminal, like, sometimes you have to do legal stuff to protect, in order to protect, there's no doubt. But there wasn't a case like that. It was more like this client wanted to, maybe move out or something, and she didn't have the money, and they're saying, well, sue her. And she said, I just don't believe, I don't think that'd be, the karma. I'm not interested in that because of the karma involved. And this group said, oh, you can't use karma as an excuse for, karma is not relevant here and that sort of thing. That's the kind of danger I feel. Okay, now maybe I'm old fashioned. I am, remember, I'm been doing this for 45 years. I came out of, 1975 in Nepal to 1988, very traditional. We had to listen to teachings that you couldn't understand half the words because the translators weren't very good, and things weren't printed. So that's my stance, is you cannot deny. How can you deny some of these teachings? I was working on a book with Lama Zopa Rinpoche with a couple other people, and in the book he was looking at the translation that had been done. In one of the translations, the verses mentioned about rebirth, and the author, the translator or the editor, left it out because it felt that would turn the audience off. So that's another good example. And Rinpoche said, how can you do that? It's in the text. And anyway, if you take it out, you're not giving people a chance. There may be people who actually want to hear about that. So I think you have to be a bit risky. You have to be willing to take risks, but without being rigid, without being, you got to be very careful, because we don't want to be fundamentalists. That just turns people off. So we don't need to be. The teachings speak for themselves. The teachings speak for themselves. Right. So Christina, did you have something you were going to say? No? Okay. Yeah.
But actually, maybe I'll just chime in. The mech mindfulness, there's even a word for it, mech mindfulness.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So anyway. I
agree. Yeah. But it's again, it's positive. It's positive. So is, and drinking a nice cup of tea can be positive, right? Or getting a massage can be positive to get rid of, so, but it's just not what we're looking for, long-term effects, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Now that I've covered one slide, Tenzin, did you want to say? Okay. Tenzin. Okay. So, I'll try to be more, I won't try to be, do a little more content. So, that's the background. This is what. Okay. So, by the way, have people had a chance to look at the book, Ego, Attachment, and Liberation?
I just downloaded it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just downloaded it today.
Okay.
It was on Amazon and it was only 99 cents, so I downloaded it today. But I haven't really gotten a chance.
Okay. Yeah, I am gonna go follow the book, just because that helps for the students and me to stay within the intent of the class, right? The intent of the class is based on this book, but at the same time, we're not going to go page by page at all through it. I just will extract some key points. Some of this will be for, and by the way, all of this can be open to discussion with you guys, okay? So in the beginning of the book, Lama talks, and I want to talk about not so much the content in this part, but more the intent. And Lama talks about making space for wisdom. And this is very much the intention between the intention or style Lama Yeshe is we could talk about problems, from the point of view of suffering, problems, Four Noble Truths, those kinds of things. But we can also talk about it from the point of view of what we're looking for. Okay, why talk about the Four Noble Truths? Is because why talk about suffering is because we're talking, for example, why talk about suffering or the lower realms, all this stuff? Why? Because we're actually trying to actualize wisdom. So in this, in Lama talks about how in the Buddhist tradition, or the activity of prostrations is often done in the beginning of the teaching. And remember that Lama taught this course of this book, that this book was a product of. He taught this in 1975. So they were approaching things first traditionally and then bridging them. And so in the beginning of the course, Lama himself would do 3 prostrations to the throne that he was going to sit on. And then it's not to the throne. And the students would prostrate. It's probably you've seen, we've been to teachings, and the teacher sits down, and sometimes people do prostrations. So it looks very, very uncomfortable to people who don't know, because it looks like you're worshiping this person. Don't ever make a prostration to a statue or an altar or a lama or a teacher in that way. You're not prostrating. We are not prostrating to that person. We're prostrating in order to subdue the ego, because when the ego is full, when the ego is full, we can't hear anything. So when you sit down, when you're going to go to a teaching, even this teaching, you want to make sure that you empty, create some space. Otherwise, nothing gets in, or not much gets in. So and we know about this kind of space is the same space I would strive for having as I walk around in the world, go through my day, go to the beach, go to work, whatever. It's the same space. If we're preoccupied with our judgments, if we're preoccupied with our sense of pride, then we won't learn anything. So the idea is to learn. Now, even I got this label to teach this class, but I should be a student, right? I should be a learner. So if I'm full of my pride of being a teacher, I'm not going to learn anything, correct? So when we teach, sometimes like we teach in the temple or in the Gompa, then if I'm teaching, I make 3 prostrations first. And what that is to humble myself, put my own ego down. And this, I think it's good to be discriminating when you take teachings from different people. I really urge you to do this. Particularly, it seems more from Westerners, is to really see if, get a sense that, for one thing, you humble yourself, you open your mind. Humbling means just open your mind. Just be aware of the preconceptions you're coming into the teaching with, into the room with. Be aware of these, and then attempt to be in a frame of mind that isn't, what's the word? I don't want to say, it isn't convinced of those. Like, might come into a class and I might be full of judgments. Who is this guy? Does he really know his stuff? And what are all these statues around here? What, I don't know, that seems pretty weird. I wonder if it's a cult, that kind of thing, whatever your thing is. Or I wonder if he has anything new to say. Probably not, but I'll just check it out. All that stuff is in the way. When we're open to wisdom, we're open to wisdom as we walk around in the world, as we deal with our kids, as we are dealing with our partners, as we go to classes, as we do our practices. When we do it with an open mind, then there's the opportunity to learn. When we do it, like when you can sit down and meditate, you go, oh God, I'm so tired. I know this meditation has been a bit boring lately. I got to figure out a way. That's a mind that's not open. So the mind that is humble, and the prostration just means I'm prostrating to wisdom. I'm prostrating to the potential of awakening. Okay? I'm prostrating to pure conceptions as opposed to false conceptions. And you just recognize that you're coming into the room with all those false conceptions or pride. As Lama says, nothing can grow in a mind full of pride. We come to the teachings, these ideas, your books, when you study, you're coming into them, I hope, all of us, to learn and develop the awakening mind, our awakening potential. Okay? This cannot happen when something else is there. And something else is always there. Okay? Okay. So a couple things that you'll discover, and we'll talk more about these in the next few weeks, is these false conceptions of ego. And this is something we've been born with and we've had since beginningless time. Okay. And these are not the only ones, as you know, many people here have studied, you know, that there's various ones, but the ones that we need to become familiar with in the beginning, there are a number of false conceptions of the ego that we need to become familiar with in the very beginning. One is that the ego projects everything as being concrete, okay, solid, unchanging. So we're not talking intellectually. Does anybody know, like, the wall around you, the walls? Does anybody know? Hang on, might have some scientists in the room. Does anybody know what % of the walls around you are made of space? Yes, thank you, Louis.
Over 99%. I don't know what the exact, it's almost all empty space.
That's right.
Period.
That's right. Isn't that amazing? Now, I'm not going to put Louis to the test, but I'll just say generically, how many of us see the wall as 99.9% space? Any of you guys, gals? So, but that is conventionally the reality of the walls around us. So we don't even see that correctly, right? Isn't that amazing? So what would it be like to see? So when I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, or just, you know, generally you're going throughout the world, throughout our life, and we're talking with our friends, you know, whatever. Their body is, I think I can make the argument that their body also is 99.9% space. Why don't we see that? This is just one of the basic misconceptions of the ego. We get deeper, right? We're going to go deeper. The ones that really keep us bound. This is just more like you know, actually, this is considered one of the lowest misconceptions. It's, you know, even in other traditions, other meditative traditions, they have experienced the actual spaciousness of form and around us. So why can't, so Louis, humor me for a minute. Why, if that's the fact, which we agree on, why can't we walk through the wall?
Because of the atomic forces, the four main forces, strong force, the weak force, the very weak force. We're just not, there are forces, there are energies to prevent us from, just like two north poles the magnet can't touch, there's essentially the energy, our energies keep us from walking through the walls from a scientific point of view.
So if we can take that one step further, in theory, is it possible to walk through walls?
No, the atomic forces are too strong. You would have to disintegrate to walk through a wall.
But if I'm already disintegrated, for the most part, because I have all this space, and I mean,
You know
what?
it's, I know what you're saying. It's just that the space is constrained by space. Okay, an atom is mostly space, but it's also a quantum field. And that quantum field constrains the space. It's like a bubble around the space.
So can anything pass through the wall?
Yes, subtle
Why?
energies, because they're just energies.
Sound?
And
Sound?
they're, yes, sound can pass through the wall.
Is
That's
sound
an electromagnetic.
Okay, so
yeah.
is sound made up of atoms, molecules?
That's debatable. Then you come into the duality between particles and waves. And
Right.
so
what are waves made up of? Particles?
Waves appear to be made up of both particles and non-particles.
So it is possible.
They act the same way. They act as both at the same time.
So it is possible for one form to go through another form.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So it might be possible for a body to go through that if it can. In theory, it should be possible.
If the body, if you had control over what the body was composed of,
thank
then
you.
maybe you could.
Thank you. There we go. You know, we develop the quality of mind, our human potential, as we develop, because this human potential, so, you know, one thing we're going to at least accept or begin to investigate is maybe there's a quality of our minds that has sort of this unlimited potential. And if not unlimited, then let's just say close to unlimited, okay? So much more than what we have any conception of right now. So when we begin to develop that potential, that's what's called the spiritual path in my language. So as we develop that, now the first thing to develop that potential is to begin to entertain the idea that we have it, right? So right now, when we study psychology, go to therapy, or you know, or go to start a business, or go throughout our life, we're not entertaining that. Even in modern psychology, they don't come from that foundation of this unlimited potential of the human mind. Okay? We're not going to say spirit, we're not going to say soul, because the human mind is something we're familiar with. We can probably get to the point where we agree that we have one. We may not know what it is, but spirit and soul, which tend to be euphemisms for the mind, just are words a little more loaded. So when we begin to develop that quality, which develops through meditation, mind training, let's put it that way. When there is a point where the mind flips on, there is a point where there's this dormant quality of the mind that is inactive right now. It's dormant. And I mean, it really brings tears to your eyes to realize that it's there. It is there, because most people don't know that either, right? That's not something anybody really talks about. Not really. You know, we could say the Christ within us. I think it's the same thing. You know, there's allusions to it, but it's not part of everyday, you know, activity or even focus for 99% of the people on this planet, I would guess. I'm just guessing, right? When that begins, when that switch gets turned on, that quality, that dormant quality, that all of a sudden begins to ignite, right? A little flicker. From the point of view where it fully takes over our normal consciousness, our consciousness becomes transformed into that. And that transformation is into an awakened mind. So what we have now is the dormant, we have an unawakened mind. The mind that doesn't see the space in the wall and lots of other things, lots and lots and lots of other things we just don't see. In other words, we could say we don't see the truth of things. When that begins to switch, that's the beginning of the spiritual persons. And in Buddhist practice, in this particular school, that's the beginning of of the path. And then, that's where the awakening mind becomes activated. Now, for Buddha, the Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, that got activated there in traditional lore. It says that Shakyamuni Buddha took 3 countless great eons to attain enlightenment. What that means is that flip or that switch happened 3 eons earlier, and it took 3 eons, great countless eons before he was that full potential was actualized. Okay. Now that sounds discouraging in one way because that's a long time, but in this Mahayana tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, there's also there's practices that we can accelerate that awakening, accelerate even to the point that you could accelerate it in one lifetime. It's very unusual, but it is possible. 1 lifetime, 2 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, like that. Okay. 1 countless great eon is a long time, billions and billions and billions of years. I think I can't remember these numbers. I think 1 countless great eons is something like 20 intermediate eons. And an eon, 1 eon is the length of time for the birth of a sun. So the birth, the residing of the sun or the star, the disintegration of that star, and the emptiness of that star, the not until the next one comes. That's considered 1 eon. Long time. And I think a countless great eon is something like 60 of those or 20 of those or something like. It's a long billions and billions and billions of years. That's how long it took for him to become enlightened according to traditional teachings. So what Lama Yeshe is encouraging us is to operate our spiritual path from the point of view of this potential. Okay, not so much from the point of view of all the problems, which we will get into. We have to confront the problems. We have to confront the neuroses, whatever you want to call them, the neurotic minds, the afflictions, all that. We have to know them. But the goal is how to start now from this idea of operating from the potential of the mind, this unlimited potential. When we generate that awakening mind, and eventually what's going to happen in that process is we're going to see reality non-conceptually. We're going to experience reality, which often, if you know, is the experience of what sometimes referred to as emptiness, okay, or interdependence, shunyata, those things, which we're not going to get into right now, but we'll get into later. So this is the view into reality. So we see exactly how things are. That lamp in front of you, your computer screen, your friends, we see them. They don't disappear. It's just we're now seeing them as solid. We already discovered that, and that's not how they are. So with the mind of wisdom, when we begin to activate that mind and then see things where they actually are without a conception, because first we start with conception. We have to start first with conception, the right, a thinking mind and a reasoning mind and a logical mind. That leads to a non-conceptual experience. When we have that non-conceptual experience, Lewis, at that point, we can walk through walls. Okay, amongst many, many other things. And walking through walls is not the goal. It's just a symbol, because what you said is that what's preventing us from walking through the wall is not the physics of it. It's the mind. I see a solid wall, I can't walk through it. Okay, and we can't just walk through the wall because theoretically I know it's not solid. Unfortunately, that doesn't work either. But that starts with that. So it's the first is to have the right theories, the right conceptions. But that doesn't lead to the full. We have to have that right reasoning, logic, contemplation, okay, critical thinking, and that hones the mind more and more. Right, like right now, we walk down the street and we have no critical thinking. Right, we just see lampposts and cars and sidewalks, and so as this process begins, you start walking down the street. And it's not that different, but all of a sudden you're different from everybody else because you start thinking, God, we're talking about that class about things not being concrete, but it looks concrete. That is a big, big step. That's I mean, that's almost as huge as becoming enlightened, because other people aren't, other beings aren't. Now, if you're a, you know, if you're a cockroach or a spider, you can't think of, no, I haven't been in one, I can't say for sure, but it seems you can't think of that stuff at all. That's why they say the description of the animal realm is they don't have critical thinking, you know. And I think there could be some level of it for very advanced animals, perhaps, maybe like dolphins and chimpanzees. But, you know, anyway, most animals do not fall into that category. And I looked up a few months ago how many mosquitoes there are in the world. I just was curious. I thought, this must just mosquitoes. You know, so you got these statisticians or whoever they're called that make these estimates, right? And so I think it said there were estimated to be either 7 or 70 quintillion mosquitoes. And a quintillion, I believe, is 18 zeros following the 70. That's just mosquitoes. And I looked up ants, and it's about the same thing. I think ants there's more because they can exist in cold climates as well as warm. So, you know, when you think of 7 billion people, it's like nothing. All those ants, now that's just mosquitoes. And then see, with ants, that's 140 quintillion. And then with plankton and fish and birds and dragonflies, and you know, it becomes mind-boggling, doesn't it? So to say that, oh, chimpanzees can reason, it's not good enough, you know, or dolphins. It's like they're statistically unmeasurable, really, aren't they? So that's what we're looking for. So we as humans, this is the beauty of the human existence and human life, is we have the potential. But if we just, as Lama says in the book, if we just follow our automatic responses, like I'm thirsty, I think I'll get a cup of tea. Then after the cup of tea, I think maybe I'll look at that YouTube video on whatever. And then after the YouTube video, I'm thinking, yeah, I got to go off and make some phone calls. And I have to go down to Home Depot. And then from Home Depot, I probably should stop in at the bank. And then from the bank, we go home and they say, what should we make for dinner? You know, my partner had a long day today. Maybe I'll make dinner. So I'm going to go down to this. We don't have any chives. So I'll go to this, or some parsley. I'll get some parsley. And then you're making this food and you're over the stove and you're making the food. And then you finish, you have a nice dinner with whoever, your family. And then after that, you think that let's watch some TV. So you watch some TV and then go to bed. And then just before bed, maybe I'll read a little bit, have a little meditation and go to sleep. And that's life. And so Lama in the draws a comparison. The Lamas often say, what's the difference between that and being a honeybee? Or that, and you know, because what's happening with there is that we're not consciously, which is part of the problem, not consciously, but we're just hypnotized out of history, right? Out of long history, that what makes me happy is going to be something as pleasure and avoiding discomfort. And that's what we call life. And if we really think about, I was going to do a meditation today, but I think we're running out of time. But if you really think about what I would like to do is give you a little bit of homework if you're willing to do it. And this homework is, I'm going to read this to you. Oh, hang on. I think I may have made a slide for it. See all, There's a long quote. I usually don't do this. You're taught when you do PowerPoint, you don't put a lot of text in there, but I'm going to read it to you. I just didn't want to read it to you without you being able to see the word. Over the next 5 days, so that was this meditation course he gave. So we could say over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to investigate and try to discover and understand my own nature and recognize my own false conceptions and mistakes. These would mean mental mistakes, by the way. From the time of my birth up until now, I've been under the control of my conditioned, dissatisfied mind. Even though my only desire is for lasting happiness and enjoyment, I'm constantly tossed up and down by external conditions. I'm completely oppressed by my uncontrolled, dissatisfied mind. I have no freedom whatsoever, even though my fickle, arrogant mind always pretends, quote, I'm happy, I'm free, end quote. Any happiness I do experience is fleeting. If another person were to persecute or oppress me, I couldn't stand it for even a day. But if I check more deeply, I will see that from the moment of my birth, my uncontrolled mind has not given me the slightest chance to be freely joyful. It has been completely enslaved by external conditions. So what I'm asking you to do, and maybe Anna can help me with this, is we'll send this to you. And this is your meditation. Just look, you don't have to read. You can read this if you want. That's not the meditation. The meditation, actually, we'll say it's a contemplation. How about that? You don't have to sit with your eyes closed or anything you don't want to. Just reflect on this. And I'd like you to look at your mind, how it functions, and see if it functions this way. So it's doing this without judgment. It's doing it with learning. It's doing it with investigation. It's a scientific observation. Okay. And I just, want you, even if you can just close your eyes for a moment and just watch your mind and think about your day. If you go to bed at night, just think, well, what did your mind pursue all day? Okay. Was it controlled or uncontrolled? Was it satisfied or dissatisfied? If it's satisfied, then why, after you had your cup of tea, did you feel to go for a walk? Or why, after your walk, did you feel you need to go to the store because you really thought about making some pasta today? If you're satisfied, you're satisfied. So the trick here is to look at how the mind really is never satisfied. It is for a moment. When you have that good cup of coffee or you have that nice conversation, it's satisfied for a moment, or it's really only a moment or two. So I really appreciate if you just do a bit of study on this, on your own mind, see if what works here, see if it doesn't, come back next week and we'll discuss it. And just, I don't want you to accept it because I'm putting it here. And Anna, can you email this to everybody?
Certainly, yes.
Okay. So I'll send you the copy of this, and please send to everyone. And are there any other? I'm gonna stop sharing, but we will send it to you. Are there any other questions or comments? You don't have to, by the way, but are there? Anything you want? And so I'll just keep going as I examine Lama's book here, and just keep going with the content that I feel might be useful. And if you have any requests, then of course we could do that. I'll try and accommodate those as well. Okay. So now as we finish, just like we motivated, so that again, it makes us more mindful, is you think for a moment about all the energy we created. I think we had some, maybe we have some interesting ideas, some insights, some provocations. And you just think, okay, all that energy we spent together in the last hour, all those imprints that are now experienced within our mind stream. So then you can say, it's like when you invest money in the bank, you can say, okay, this is for my kid's college fund, or this is for a new car or house, whatever, retirement. So these imprints that we generated, just for a moment, reflect on how you would dedicate them invest them towards further understanding the full potential of the mind so that it fully awakens in order to be of benefit to all the other living beings who don't know this. So reflect on that for a minute. Okay, thank you. I saw your email address, so okay. Enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are. Your night in the UK, Pennsylvania, the rest of your afternoon. Lewis is in, I forgot where Lewis said he was.
Florida.
Florida. Okay, same as Sean, same time zone. Tenzin Law, have fun in your, let's see, it's getting to be, it's pretty late. Wait, what? Pretty late there, isn't it? Yeah.
In the UK?
No, Tenzin.
Oh, sorry.
No, in Tenzin Palder in Dharamsala.
Hmm.
Maybe she's asleep.
We may have lost her in all that space.
Okay, you guys and gals, see you soon, and thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
So much. It's fantastic. Thank you.